So I want to show you something that is a miracle. I typed into my paid version of ChatGPT, I need a lighthearted, cartoonish like thing for a semi-religious gathering.
Oh, Lord.
That will ask people to silence their cell phones. And I typed that in, and this is what I got. That's a miracle. What? You're an artist.
I'm a little terrified of what AI can create. I don't like feeling tricked that it's a real person and then you find out it's not, and I don't know.
Okay, so the advantage of this is I don't have to pay copyright.
I know.
So if I use a Getty image, I have a risk if I publish it. So,
If you get paid for publishing it. If you don't collect income on it, they can't there's nothing.
I tried that one time and they didn't like it.
Oh, yeah?
Because I put Getty images on my website and they didn't like it.
Because you get paid for what you do.
I don't get money through my website.
Well, you get money for your profession. Yeah. Yeah. Picky. We artists, so fussy about our work.
So no matter who you are, where you are on your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. And as always, we begin this time in silence. If it's helpful for you to close your eyes, you can do that. And it's our way of expressing our awareness and intention that we live in the heart of sacred mystery, and that this sacred mystery seeks to find expression through how we live in this world and how we relate to one another. So, grace be in our heads and in our thinking. Grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. Grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in the mouths of Holly and me today as we speak. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. And grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may everything that we do here contribute to our growth in patience, love, compassion, and inclusivity. And may it benefit all people everywhere. Amen. So before we get underway, there are three things that I want to say. When Holly and I co-teach, and even more than that, but when we co-teach, we talk almost every day about what we're doing, what we're writing, and we go back and forth about it. And I have this ambition to have everything done by Friday, so that on Saturday I can do other things. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so we had finished Friday, finished all the slides, all that, and then on Saturday, I woke up and we were at war. And so nothing we wrote is reflected, that is reflected in what we wrote. And I have heard and read some who say this is a great thing to have done. I have heard and I have read some who said this is a horrible thing to have done.
Van Jones actually put out a piece that sort of goes through all the reasons why and the sort of reasons for and the reasons against each category. It's a well-written piece, and it's on his Substack, worth checking out. But this is the backdrop in which we teach today without knowing this was the backdrop.
Right. And however you think about it, war is hell. Mm-hmm. And the people who really pay for it are the citizens on both sides. One of the strikes, and there were many that went off in Iran. Saturday is a weekday in that culture, not a holiday. So kids were in school on Saturday, and one of the bombs hit a girls' school, killing nearly 60 people, 60 children. I read this morning, I checked on the New York Times because I subscribe to that. And I think 5 American service people have already been killed in this. So it's on both sides. And the people who pay for it are us and the citizens of Iran. As a woman I got into a conversation with in Turkey said to me one time, we all want the same things. We all want to have a good time with our families, believe that our children have a future, be able to have a good day at work and go home and enjoy the evening, a meal with our people. It's the politicians who cause us trouble. So I just wanted to raise an awareness of the fact that we had written this before we knew that, and it's a sad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and I think it's kind of interesting just as we talk through what we're talking through today that this is the kingdom in which we live, this terrible, beautiful thing called being human.
So the second thing I wanted to mention, it's not as bad as war, but I take it really personally, and that is that next weekend is the time change. I don't like it. I don't. So just be aware, we have a number of clocks in our house that have to be reset. And for those of us who are in the religious business, the Sunday of the time change is always a time of great anxiety because we wonder if we're going to be here on time. So just be aware that move your clocks forward 1 hour before you go to bed on Saturday if it doesn't happen automatically. Okay? The third thing I want to say is that this Wednesday, now this is a change in mood. This Wednesday is Holly's birthday. Tuesday is Holly's birthday. So I want us to sing happy birthday.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, if not that, do you want happy birthday?
I mean, it's one of the hardest songs to sing as a group, but go for it. I prefer the Stevie Wonder version.
Well, you can just send best wishes up here. So send all your best wishes to Holly, and just send them up here, and I'm going to collect them.
Yeah.
Watch this.
Okay.
I'm going to collect them. Now all the best wishes are in this balloon.
Okay.
Which I'm going to give to you so that you can take it home, and you'll have all these best wishes that you can keep for the rest of the day. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, before I do that, I need to make it a magic balloon.
Yes. I was warned of this.
So here's one that I got from Hogwarts. It is now a magic balloon, and you may have it.
Okay. It's very breast.
But how will people know that it's a magic balloon? So when I got this particular one at Hogwarts, it's called a proving one, because in it there is a needle. You're not afraid of loud noises, are you?
Everybody is, but no, I'm prepared.
If there are any children watching this, do not try this at home. Go next door. And that way you won't get caught by your parents, okay? This is a magic balloon. But Holly needs the blessings of the big, beautiful birthday balloons. So there they are.
They're all over me. Thank you. Thank you.
You can examine the needle later.
Yeah, it looks like one of the epidural
Well, the
needles.
reason they gave us this is that, like, if we put a
Yeah.
potion on somebody and made them invisible,
Uh-huh.
we could still see them, but we didn't know that other people could. So we jab them with a needle.
to make sure they were still
And if
there.
they yelped, it meant the potion didn't work.
Oh.
You want me to try it?
No, I do not. Y'all can see me, right? No, I'm still here? Okay.
All right, let's get
Okay.
serious.
Woo.
All right. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'll be 50. That's kind of a big... Yeah.
Take notes.
So you can remember what
Yeah.
it's like?
So
Okay.
when I get there, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Guess what? Today, so in sort of a practice, sometimes I use just fun card decks to draw like just little wisdom cards, and the one I drew today was the crone. I thought that was quite fitting. Yeah.
It is. When Sherry
Yeah.
turned 50, a group of women had a crone service for her.
I need that. Yeah.
So last week, among other things, I taught that the purpose of religion is to give us a firm foundation off of which we can step into the uncharted territory that is the spiritual life. And that's one of the reasons that I am so intent on religious literacy. We need religion so that it has that firm foundation for us. One visual metaphor that I have for this, it's again AI created image, is that of a swimming pool. Most of you, I assume, have had this experience where you get in the swimming pool, you put your feet against the wall, you hold onto the side of the swimming pool, and then you push yourself back, right? And you go back into the swimming pool and do whatever you do. Sink if you can't swim, and then somebody has to come and save you. But there's another metaphor I've come to believe that in spiritual teaching, the closer we get to the heart of things, all we can use are metaphors. For example, last week I said that the word Father in the Lord's Prayer is not to be taken literally as being a white man, mostly disinterested and punitive in the sky. The word Father is a metaphor for one who manages a well-run household where there is enough.
It's funny though, I really think mothers are the ones who run the well-run household. I'm just gonna say, no diss on the wonderful fathers, but mothers run the household for the most part. So let's change it. Yeah.
All right, let's start all over. Okay, there are three things I want to know. So this is a theology of enoughism. Father, mother means enough. And here's another metaphor I heard Jim Finley in one of his talks tell of a study done on paratroopers. Scientists fitted men who jumped out of airplanes in the military with all sorts of monitoring devices to test their levels of anxiety and stress during the experience of jumping out of airplanes. Their breathing, their heart rate, their blood pressure, galvanic scan response, all that sort of thing. And for those who just were beginning their time as paratroopers, their anxiety, pardon the pun, was sky high right before they jumped out of the plane, which is easy to understand. For the old-timers, however, their anxiety was highest right before they hit the ground, because they knew that the real dangers come not when you leave the aircraft, but when you hit the ground, especially if your chute does not work. You know the phrase, if at first you don't succeed, try again? It doesn't work if your chute doesn't open. So I heard Finley give this example in a course I took from him called Mystical Sobriety. And this particular lecture was called The Groundless Jump. And over the years, I have heard some people respond to my teaching by saying, You don't give me anything to hang on to. Now, I don't think that is true, but I appreciate that experience. However, in good spiritual experience, I think that's a wise thing, because in this experience, when we step off of religion into the uncharted territory that is the spiritual life, we don't have anything to hold on to. What we experience is that we end up being held. However, we don't have that experience. We can't have that experience unless we have something to push off from. And that hopefully is part of what this time today is about. And the hope that I have for this time, as well as all of these teachings, is that they may implant inside of us a new life, a new appreciation for each other, a new love for each other, and a new way of thinking, so that we can go from here to make our contribution to change the world. We do live to make a difference now, but also for the future. Our hope needs to be tied to something that is larger than our ability to feel hopeful. So that our mantra might be, if not for us, then because of us. We are not here simply to succeed for today. So I got this idea from Stephen Mitchell's book, The Gospel of Jesus, where in the commentary on the Lord's Prayer, he describes it as a prayer for beginners. And I'm saying that learning it and knowing it and inhabiting it and letting it inhabit us is the foundation for us to push off from into a deeper spiritual work and living. It is what prepares us for the groundless jump.
I think it's so interesting that Mitchell describes it as a prayer for beginners, and John Dominic Crossan calls it the greatest, strangest, most radical manifesto hymn of hope for all humanity prayer, not a beginner prayer. So in some ways we're dealing with a paradox. It's among the first prayers that many of us learn when we are sort of brought into the Christian tradition. And it's also one that in the deepening of our faith we can continue to grapple with at deeper and deeper levels. We first taught about this prayer together in 2021.
5 years ago.
To the month. Well, we're in March now, but it was in February of 2021. So this is a micro illustration of how things evolve. I think we have different things to say today than we did 5 years ago. So much has happened. This prayer is prayed by Christians of all stripes, but never mentions the inerrancy of the Bible, the virgin birth, miracles, death, resurrection, the Holy Spirit, church, priests, or popes. Nor does it ever mention who is saved or not saved. It's also in the tradition of Jewish prayer, but it doesn't mention the Torah, temple, rabbi, Moses. It doesn't mention any traditional Jewish things either. It does proclaim a radical vision of distributive justice, which we're getting into today, and is defined by distinct poetic techniques. Crossan asserts that the entire biblical tradition flows through this one prayer, but he also says it's much bigger than that, and that it speaks to the conscience of the entire world, regardless of your denomination or tradition. I think we could argue that point because it's still centered in kind of Christology, but beyond that, it does speak to a kind of bringing of justice to the entire world. Another reason it's considered radical is because it transcends cultural and geographical barriers. It's said in more than 500 languages. It addresses core human needs like sustenance, forgiveness, protection, and also community in the use of words like our, us. It's both a prayer of petition and reverence. It's relational. It goes outward toward the cosmos, toward God, toward the Creator, then inward, using I, our, we. to draw the supplicant into participation with this great unfolding. It made me think of Martin Buber's I Thou philosophy, from which another one of my favorites, Fritz Kunkel, developed his psychology of we. In both, we encounter this intersection of psychology and spirituality. Martin Buber believed that we need to go beyond an objective, impersonal it understanding of God and toward integrating God as a human experience, hence our Father. Only then, he believed, could we genuinely relate to others as aspects of the divine and then learn to love one another accordingly. Fritz Kunkel was Freud's analysand, corresponded regularly with Jung, and was deeply influenced by Martin Buber's work. Over time, he developed this psychology of we that emphasized the importance of relatedness to others and the divine. For Kunkel, this relatedness has its genesis in this deep understanding that the small we, so each one of us, is part of a much larger we, the integrated whole. And that's what we need to tether ourselves to live a meaningful, creative, spiritual life. Both of these men believe that the spiritual life is relational. We can't have it without one another. It's deeply embedded in our daily connections and interactions. So the Lord's Prayer actually echoes this relationality, rooted in both I, thou, and we. Today, we're going to deal with how thy kingdom come, that phrase, in the context of modernity, completely blows up the notion of a three-tiered universe: heaven, earth, hell. We also will deal with how thy will be done is not a passive acceptance of God's interference in human affairs, but a call for us to actively participate in the world with humility and justice and mercy. And if the kingdom is here, right here in this room that we are inhabiting, then we are the instruments. We're the ones who fulfill the will or the purpose of that kingdom.
So this is the phrase that we're dealing with?
Okay.
I think that didn't happen.
Sorry about that.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thy kingdom come. That's the way we're most of us are used to hearing that and saying that. Now, Eugene Peterson renders this phrase, set the world right. And again, that's that householder image, where mother
Good job.
and father have
Together.
something to do with that.
It is together.
Neil Douglas Klotz, in his effort to translate it from the Aramaic, puts it this way: soften the ground of our being and carve out a space within us where your presence can abide. Now, there has probably been more mayhem, malice, murder, and misunderstanding. Notice the alliteration there.
Good job.
Okay. About and over the word kingdom than any other concept in the teaching of Jesus. One of the most unfortunate, of course, is that so many people believe that what Jesus is referring to was some space out there in outer space where you go to, or part of you does, when you die. That's a big emphasis of evangelical Christianity. Are you saved means, will you go to heaven when you die, heaven being the kingdom of God. And of course, some people don't make it for various reasons.
Whoa, trying to go back.
Go back.
There we go.
There you go. So one of the worst things, and it's happening now in various ways, but one of the worst things that has happened is that people who have considered themselves Christian have taken it upon themselves to convince other people that they should be Christians so that when they die, they will go to heaven. So we have invaded other countries, destroyed people's culture, way of life, et cetera, doing that. If you really want to know something about this, Karen Armstrong's books, The History of God and The Battle for God, are two accessible books. They're big, but they're accessible. Outstanding history about part of this. There was a time in Spain, for example, when Muslims, Turks, Jews, and Christians lived in harmony side by side in communities. But the Spanish Inquisition said everybody should be Christian. So if you lived in Spain at that time, starting with Ferdinand and Isabel, if you were not Christian, you were given three choices: convert, leave, or die. It was just a Christian thing to do. Now, Dermot de Muraku, the Irish spiritual teacher that we were reading 5 years ago, when we taught about the Lord's Prayer, says that a better understanding of kingdom would be community of empowerment. And I can see how Muraku gets to this interpretation, because those who became part of the communities that Jesus created, or that were created in Jesus' memory, were indeed empowered to live nonviolent lives. That's a biggie, which we'll get into at some point. They were empowered to live lives of joy and forgiveness, generosity. And they embodied those three qualities, which are the essence of the teaching of Jesus. And those three qualities are humility, justice, and peace. Okay. You're going to memorize this. That's a great oversimplification. But the question is, what was in Jesus' mind when he said this? Now, he was comparing what he was teaching to the Empire of Rome. And there was among Jews at the time an expectation that God was going to send a Messiah to lead Israel, and that this Messiah would be a warrior-like king, like King David, who would establish the kingdom of Israel again, meaning the Jewish people would be the ones who would gain ascendancy and be in power. However, there is nothing in the teaching of Jesus that makes him a warrior king. Love your enemy and turn the other cheek is not a way to be a warrior. So Crossan has convinced me that Jesus was meaning something dramatically different than what Judaism at the time thought or expected about a coming Messiah or a new kingdom. And I think, and again, this is oversimplification, and you'll have to be patient because we'll get into this as time evolves. I think that what Jesus was saying was, you've been waiting for God when in fact God has been waiting for you. God's kingdom is here. It's within you and among you, non-dual. But you have to realize that, and you have to live that. And the other mark of this kingdom, in contrast to that of the Roman Empire, is that it would be a community of nonviolence. And it is one of the things that Jesus meant in his core teaching, is that you are the ones for whom God has been waiting to do something, to get humility, justice, and peace activated.
So here's a little context about the time in which both Jesus and the Lord's Prayer kind of emerge on the scene. Both arrive just after the peak of the first axial age, which occurs between 800 and 200 BC. For more context, we are now in the second axial age, according to kind of philosophers and historians, that is marked, we call it the modern age, but it's from the end of World War II on, so not even 100 years in. This time in between is kind of a bridge period where religions and empires or kingdoms got established on earth around the ideas of the first axial age. So there were two primary pathways of this age, Greek and Judaic, or philosophical and spiritual. The hero archetype emerges during this time as a kind of alpha male, like the depictions of Greek myths and sculpture, thought to be the perfect man. A second type of hero also emerges around spiritual wisdom, creativity, and altruism. Jesus is the latter. Two things get established during this time: a preference for masculine individualism and a shift in perspective that enlightenment and transcendence is possible without the intermediary of a priest, pharaoh, or king. Humans have direct access to the divine at this point, and this thinking threatens a hierarchical worldview. And the teachings of Jesus, especially around forgiveness and community, only exacerbate this tension. So it's not ironic that both Jesus and Socrates, Jew and Greek respectively, were killed for very similar reasons. They both challenged the status quo, and they empowered regular people with independent thought. This is the main crux of the first axial age. And even though it has absolutely been imperfectly executed over time, we can look back and see that the first axial age sought to move us away from tribalism and external deities who demanded sacrifice, punished with storms, droughts, demanded virgins in volcanoes, toward a society where we were taught to take personal responsibility for our thinking, for our lives. It was also a time that preached broad-reaching compassion, deepening knowledge of the cosmos. A lot of scientists emerged in this time, universal morality. And instead of taking them literally, myths are now vehicles for inspiration and contemplation. The gaps we once filled with God are increasingly narrowed, and we're left with this weight of personal responsibility. Thy kingdom come is a line that directly reflects this radical shift. It's here now, God is immanent, among and within us, and if that's the case, the lines between human and divine, us and them, you and me, get blurred. The concept of enemy or other is called into question. I still think Meister Eckhart said it best. He's later first axial age. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. It continues to say, my eye and God's eye are one seeing, one knowing, one love. If we understand the Lord's Prayer in its original language, then yes, we need to examine the word kingdom. And what I'm offering is the Hebrew or Aramaic word. Hebrew is malkut, and the Aramaic word is malkuta. Crossan teaches us that both of these words indicate process over person, style of rule rather than place. In other words, the kingdom's not a throne in the sky where we go, but a quality. One of the qualities of this kingdom is that it is just. And this is not in my notes, but we are a nation at war. As of Saturday, a kingdom that is just, it's a wish, it's a hope, it's a longing. It's one we haven't arrived at yet. And it makes me think about, this famous line of the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. I don't think it's an arc. I think we're in this fat looping spiral where there's tiny little overlaps of progress, And so it's hard. Kingdoms don't prize one life over another. A just kingdom doesn't say, 85 children dead is just collateral damage for a just cause. It's not what it does. So we've got to grapple with that. In my training in spiritual psychology, we studied the mystical meaning of the tree of life, or Jacob's ladder, as a pathway between the material and the physical worlds. This is a Kabbalistic teaching, ancient mystical Judaism. The tree of life is actually also superimposed on the human body such that it aligns with the chakra system. So there's two ancient spiritual traditions coming together. Malkut is the base. You can see that in the slide. It's the root of the tree. It's the same as our root chakra, somewhere in the pelvic area. It's associated with physical embodiment. So it is us. It is incarnation that manifests that divine energy and then grows up out of the roots. It is, simply said, the quality of being human. So I want to make this even more plain. And Bill has already alluded to this. The kingdom of God is not just here on earth, but it resides in you. You are the kingdom, and you are also in it. It's essential to each one of us. It's the very root of our being. It's simple enough to say, and we can all kind of go, yeah, but it is so hard to take in. Because if it were easy, if we had taken it in, we would not have spent the last 2 millennia trying to figure this out. We would not be at war. So 2,000 years is a tiny breath in cosmic time. And on the cusp of that exhale, we're only just able to grasp what thy kingdom come means.
So when you talk about the ark, that Martin Luther King?
Well, actually, it was before Martin Luther King.
So I've thought about that.
He was a Unitarian minister.
I've thought about that as we get into the will of God, thy will be done. Because so many people see God as punitive, and I think what we experience in the world is consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
You hit me, I hit you back. Unless we have awakened to the first actual age's truth that we belong to each other.
Yeah.
So I think there is the cycle for those who deal with consequences. And what we're shooting for is personal responsibility that contributes to the arc of justice.
Right. Yeah.
It's complicated and hard.
The school of being human is the hardest one, I think.
So we've called this time today, Living with Certain Uncertainty. Now that title came because of Stephen Mitchell's statement that the Lord's Prayer is training wheels to step off into something else. And that something else that we step off into is not certainty. So we have to have that religious certain platform to give us that springboard. And what Mitchell said in that was that one of the things that we step off into is the cloud of unknowing. So when we end this time today, we're going to read to you from the cloud of unknowing, which we'll talk more about in a minute. I want to say that based on the feedback I've gotten from some of you about, and I'm generalizing here, about the teachings that are offered in ordinary life, that we get two responses, broadly speaking. One is, finally, something makes sense. So you, those of you in this category find the teachings that are offered in here aligning with your deepest intuitions, aligning with your everyday experiences. I would say in spiritual direction, as you navigate through the uncharted territory that is the spiritual life, look for resonance. What does your heart feel when you're doing this? Is there a rightness about what you're doing? You trust your intuition about that. And the other response is somewhere between jarring and uncomfortable. This is not.
And probably it's both. We might one day feel like finally something that makes sense, and the next day
then jarring
like
and uncomfortable.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, I read a review of a book just this week about how most people make jelly. It's jarring.
Wah, wah.
I cannot help it. I have Tourette's and Asperger's, and that's the way it shows up. I'm not kidding.
It's how every conversation that we have ends, with some sort of story that ends up being a joke, and I'm hooked every time.
So some of you, this is not what you heard in Sunday school. This is not what you heard growing up, some of you. So right now, and there are plenty of times in human history about which this could be said, we are in a major battle in our culture, in this country, about what is the truth. Does the truth matter? Do we embrace values that cause us to take factual truth and just put it aside? So if doing religious work that leads into living the values of humility, justice, and peace doesn't lead us into truth, why do it? How does what we believe matter in the world? I think we have to say about so much that the church has taught over the years, we don't know for sure. I cannot prove anything that we have taught in here, are teaching in here, or will teach in here, that it is the perfect vision of reality. We hope for approximation. Now, there are people who think they've got all this figured out. And they, to me, are like a ship that has come into port. They've arrived at a secure harbor where there is nothing else to learn. I'm not in that camp. Holly is not in that camp. We are still searching. We are sailing on open waters, and right now the seas are rough.
I just can't help but mention that in the last week I've had 2 dreams about being on a boat in a wide open sea where there's no land around.
A ship is made to be on the ocean. So if you walk into the cathedral across the plaza and look up at the ceiling, what you see is the bottom of a ship. Go look at it. Go look at it. That is exactly what it is. A boat was one of the earliest symbols for the church. And one of the most powerful stories created by the followers of Jesus was that they were out in a boat on a storm-tossed sea. This painting that you see is Rembrandt's. And in that boat, on that storm, he asked his disciples a question and made a statement. And he said, "Why are you afraid? Where is your faith?" So in that story, the opposite of faith is fear. So I want to add one other thought to this. Our world is getting more complex by the day, harder to navigate. My personal experience of the wayless way is that it gets more complex, not less. More difficult to navigate, not easier. Not that it's hard, but what is difficult about it is that the further you go in the spiritual journey, the more you realize you're not in control. And we Western people do not like that. I, as a 7, I want to know what's going to happen next, right? I have a plan. Don't get in the way.
Well, it's interesting, as 6 and 7 on the Enneagram, the primary emotion of the head type is fear. So if the opposite of faith is fear, I want to also say that fear, when encountered, fuels faith. It's the invitation to faith. It's also the invitation to courage.
Yeah, and another definition is that the opposite of faith is certainty.
Right.
Yeah, which 7's love.
Love, yeah.
I'm sure of that.
Oh, goodness. Before we get into this next line, I want to ground us in the second axial age. We're in that next breath of cosmic time. And thus, this next line of the greatest prayer, thy will be done. I had this sort of realization this week that, like, those two are inhales, exhales. Over thousands of years, thy kingdom come, and now we're in the thy will be done stage. We want to take us to kind of the literal moment the second axial age began through the eyes of Viktor Frankl. Bear in mind the goals of this time, post-World War II, we're likely still forming them as we speak. We're 80 years in, folks. Not long. Moving from individualism to an interconnected consciousness, we understand more now about the cosmos than ever before. And still don't only understand a pinprick of what's actually out there. Ecological and planetary survival, so it's not just personal survival, it's the whole planet. Synthesizing the opposites, a concept brought about by Carl Jung's work. And transforming specific cultural traditions into more inclusive and globally relevant ones. So in short, this is a time in which our autonomous selves, our individual selves, should feel our embeddedness into this larger reality. We have pictures for what that looks like. As we're so new into this second axial age, we're just starting to figure out collective consciousness. This is awesome, and it is daunting, because we are the first taskmasters of this age. To find ourselves right at the beginning of something is terrifying, and it comes with huge birthing pains. So remember, again, that it took nearly 3,000 years for the first axial age to unfold into this next stage. So back to Viktor Frankl. Imagine this. It's late January 1945. You're emaciated, a shell of yourself, huddled together with other emaciated shells of selves in a brick or maybe wooden barrack. And you've heard rumors of liberation, that you'll soon be free. A dream that you've dreamt for so long that when it actually happens, you cannot believe that it is real. There's not pleasure in freedom yet. You're given food and cigarettes days later by some of the same ones who beat you the last week. Or by people who turned the other cheek. Turned away, not turned the other cheek in that sense, as your comrades were burned alive. So is this offering real? These small communions are accepted maybe with trembling hands. My grandfather could have encountered someone, I know he encountered someone just like Viktor Frankl. He was at the liberation of Dachau. Maybe he was offering them cigarettes. I can sustain imagining this for only a minute until I'm just overwhelmed with what that moment is like. This is the moment between incarceration and liberation. This is what it feels like for the kingdom to come. Viktor Frankl writes of his compulsion to pray as something broke through, and I quote, the strange fetters which had previously restrained me. He writes, one day, a few days after the liberation, I walked through the country past flowering meadows for miles and miles, toward the market town near the camp. Larks rose to the sky, and I could hear their joyous song. There was no one to be seen for miles around. There was nothing but the wide earth and sky and the lark's jubilation in the freedom of space. I stopped. I looked around and up to the sky, and I went down on my knees and wept. At that moment, there was very little I knew of myself or of the world. I had but one sentence in mind, always the same. I called to the Lord from my narrow prison, and he answered me in the freedom of space. How long I knelt there and repeated this sentence, memory can no longer recall. But I know that on that day, in that hour, my life started. Step for step, I progressed until I again became a human being. The kingdom is about becoming a human being, stepping into our humanity. And the will of God requires that we participate in it, not receive it, but participate in it. Frankl and so many others like him were faced with a choice upon their liberation. Do I turn towards bitterness and disillusionment? So seductive. Or acceptance and mercy? It's likely that the answer for the second axial age is holding the tension of both. There was a time when I thought that the will of God was executed in kind of the micro decisions of daily life. What should I eat? What should I wear? Who should I marry? I mean, at some point, I rejected this amount of micromanagement. The image of God as determinate and meddling is the God of our ancestors. It still lurks in our DNA, and so easily to be seduced by that God. You decide, God, and then to think that we hear what we want to hear. Part of us wants to abdicate responsibility because it is so much easier. And it's kind of delicious to blame someone else when something goes wrong. But the will of God is actually that we participate fully in the kingdom through acts of humility, justice, mercy, and I'll add thanksgiving, even in the midst of great suffering, and maybe even especially in the midst of great suffering, to practice these traits. I think the fact that we're here at all, that we have eyes and ears and hands and hearts, that we are those instruments of the cosmos, it's humbling. We can write poetry about it. We are offered such spaciousness, equal parts, this gorgeous, this is the tension that I'm holding right now, how gorgeous and terrible it is to be human. There's so much room to grow. So, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Two breaths that link the first and the second axial ages. The kingdom is here. We are to revere it and tend to it with humility, justice, and mercy, while also being mindful of the fact that we, all of us, are both of it and in it.
So, as I've said many times, in spiritual teaching, repetition is not redundant. The purpose of religion is to give us a firm foundation off of which we can step into the uncharted territory that is the spiritual life. We push off from the side of the pool, we jump off into the bottomless jump. So when we pray, Our Father who art in heaven, what do we mean? Because God is not an entity. God's not in this world. I mean, not above the world, not outside the world. God is a metaphor for something that is much deeper, much less imaginable. Early on, and I can't find the source of this now, but someone told me that Buddha said that asking questions about God will only make you miserable. You know, Buddhism is Hinduism with the God stripped out, right? So the philosopher, you ready for something deep? Not that what she's been doing has not been, but here's something deep. The philosopher Peter Hodgson put it this way. God is the being by which beings are. God is the event of world unconcealment by which new meaning and new possibilities are created. Now, if this is not very clear, that's good. Because this is a mystery. After you push off from the side of the pool, after you take the jump, you are not jumping into certainty. So you might ask, well, what good is prayer then? Well, prayer creates an avenue. And it's only one of many possible contemplative practices. But it creates an avenue through this uncharted territory that is the spiritual life. There is a great Zen saying, we follow a path no one has walked before, following the steps left by others. What I do know for sure is that the human race has found some form of prayer helpful for millennia. So in the late 1300s, an anonymous English monk or priest wrote a book about prayer.
Maybe it was a woman.
Huh?
Maybe it was a woman.
I'm sorry, it was a woman. It probably was. It has become a central classic of Christian spirituality.
Yeah.
And it's called The Cloud of Unknowing. And it is a guide to the reader of it to a direct, loving encounter with a God who is beyond concepts, beyond images. Jim Finley, I hope you don't get sick and tired of my mentioning him. He teaches that this book, Meister Eckhart, Teresa Avila, and The Dark Night of the Soul by John of the Cross are essential books for understanding mystical Christianity. So we're going to close this today by reading a passage from The Cloud of Unknowing. The language is sexist. You suggested we should change it. Well, I didn't.
We kept it in its original
We kept it just like it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to remember, this is written in the 1300s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Lift up your heart to God with a meek stirring of love, and intend God himself and none of his created things. And be sure not to think of anything but himself, so that nothing may work in your mind or in your will, but only himself. And do whatever you can to forget all the creatures that God ever made and all their works.
When you first begin, you find just a darkness, and as it were a cloud of unknowing. You do not know what, except what you feel that in your will, a naked intent toward God. This darkness and this cloud, no matter what you do, is between you and your God and hinders you, so that you can neither see him clearly by the light of understanding in your reason, nor feel him in the sweetness of love in your affection. Therefore, prepare to abide in this darkness as long as you must, evermore crying after him whom you love. For if ever you are to see him or feel him in this life, it must always be in this cloud and in this darkness.
But now you ask me, how shall I think upon God himself? And what is he? To this I cannot answer you, except to say, I do not know.
For with your question you have brought me into that same darkness and into that same cloud of unknowing that I want you to be in. For of all other creatures and their works, yes, and of the works of God himself, a man may through grace have fullness of knowing, and he can well think upon them. But upon God himself no man can think. And therefore I wish to leave everything I can think, and choose for my love that thing which I cannot think, because he may well be loved, but not by thought. By love he may be gotten and held, but by thinking, never. That's good stuff. No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargo, so watch your step, and we'll see you here next week. Thank you.